Today, we're diving into one of the most powerful stories of courage ever told. It's a story about what happens when your integrity puts you on a collision course with absolute power, and when the price for doing the right thing is literally everything.
So let me just ask you this. Picture a moment in your life, a real test of your deepest convictions. Without a shadow of a doubt, what the right thing to do is.
But what if doing it meant a literal death sentence? For a man named Daniel, this wasn't just some metaphor. This was his reality. So let's get into it.
To really understand the whole lion's den situation, we've got to understand the political trap that was set for him. You see, this wasn't some random act of cruelty. It was a carefully planned out plot, born from pure professional jealousy.
So, who was this guy Daniel? Well, he wasn't some young hothead. He was a seasoned public servant, an old man at this point, whose career had spanned decades and even empires. He was taken from his home as a young man, but he served faithfully, rising through the ranks based on nothing but his competence and his character. And here's the real kicker. Daniel didn't get into trouble for messing up. He got into trouble because he was just too good at his job. King Darius saw how exceptional he was and was planning to basically make him prime minister over the entire kingdom. And, well, that kind of success tends to make some very powerful enemies.
So his rivals, they launched a full-blown investigation. They dug for any dirt they could find, financial scandals, political disloyalty, anything. And they found nothing. The man's record was squeaky clean. But they did notice one thing, his unbreakable, non-negotiable habit of praying to his God. And they thought, aha, that's it. We can use that against him. So they cooked up a law that they knew only Daniel would break. They went to the king, stroked his ego, and proposed this decree. For the next 30 days, nobody can pray to any god or any person except King Darius. And if they do, they get thrown into the lion's den. The king, flattered, signed it into law. And under Persian law, that meant it could never be changed. The trap was officially set.
So how did Daniel react? Did he panic? Did he start praying in secret? Nope. He simply went home, went up to his room, opened his windows so everyone could see, and he prayed, just like he did every other day. His consistency was way more powerful than his fear.
His enemies, of course, were watching and waiting. They reported him on the spot. And even though the king was devastated, he realized he'd been tricked. The law was the law. And that leads us to this terrifying moment of truth. A night in a pit with hungry lions.
As Daniel was being led away, the king, who was just beside himself with regret, said these words to him. It's such a wild moment, right? You have this pagan king, trapped by his own pride and his own law, putting his last shred of hope in the God of his most faithful employee.
You can just feel how final this is. A giant stone was rolled over the mouth of the den. It was sealed with the king's own signet ring. That whole night, the king couldn't eat, he couldn't sleep, he just paced back and forth, completely tormented. But down in the den, a very different story was unfolding.
At the first crack of dawn, the frantic king rushes to the den and shouts Daniel's name. And from inside that dark pit, he hears Daniel's voice, perfectly calm. An angel showed up, he said. The lion's mouths were shut. He was totally fine.
When they pulled him out, there wasn't a scratch on him. And the reason the Bible gives for this miracle is so specific. It wasn't luck. It wasn't because the lions weren't hungry. It was simply because he had trusted in his God. That's it. His faith was the direct cause of his rescue.
Okay, so this is way more than just a cool story about surviving an animal attack. It's a masterclass in what real, resilient trust actually looks like. So what can we really take away from Daniel's experience?
And this right here, this is the absolute core of it all. Daniel's courage in the lion's den wasn't created in that moment of crisis. It was revealed there. It was the result of decades of quiet, consistent, daily prayer and trust long before any lions were ever part of the equation.
Let's break this down into 3 huge truths. First, trusting God might actually cost you something. For Daniel, his faithfulness is the very thing that got him thrown to the lions. Second, God doesn't always keep you from the den. Sometimes he gets into the den with you. And third, your deliverance, your survival, ends up magnifying God's glory. It turns your private trial into a public testimony.
And this really flips a common assumption on its head, doesn't it? I think we often believe that if we're faithful, we'll get to avoid the hard stuff. But Daniel's story suggests something totally different. It says that true faith isn't about getting a free pass from trouble. It's about having a divine presence with you right in the middle of it.
So how does a story from over 2,500 years ago about lions have anything to do with our lives today? Well, the challenges look a lot different, but the core principle is exactly the same.
Our lions' dens aren't caves with actual predators. They're those moments of intense pressure. It's the pressure at work to fudge the numbers. It's the social pressure to just go along with something you know is wrong. It's being misunderstood or even isolated because you chose to stand for your values.
So, you see, the real issue isn't whether you'll face lions. That's a given. In this life, the lions in one form or another are going to show up.
The real question is, what will your response be? Will you be like Daniel? Will you maintain that quiet, consistent integrity, that commitment to kneel before God, even when the culture, the law, or your own friends are pushing you to stand for something else?
And this is the transformational truth hidden in this story. When you stand firm, the trial you're in doesn't get the final word. The den will not destroy you. The lions will not define you. And the night will not last forever.
So we end on this thought. The character that Daniel showed in that den was built in the quiet, unseen moments of his everyday life. And it's the exact same for us. The small choices we make today, to be honest, to pray, to be faithful when no one's watching, that's what's building the faith that will be revealed when our own lions arrive. So the question is, what is your faith building today?